So what's going on, guys? DIY Dan, Saltwater Junkie here again, and in this video I'm going to be going over a new Jebao dosing pump that I've added. Now, I've actually had this pump for about 6 months and I haven't had any major problems with it. Now, Jebao is obviously on the cheaper side as far as aquarium products go, but I've had pretty good luck with the ones that I have bought and used. In fact, one of my longest running return pumps is a Jebao, and it's going on probably 5 years now. So in this video, guys, I'm going to go over how to calibrate this Jebao dosing pump. I'm also going to go over some issues that I had with the supplements and the pump itself. I'm also going to show you how these pumps work because I ended up taking one apart. And we're going to touch on how to program the unit itself. So keep in mind, guys, I try and give the most information in the least amount of time as possible so I don't waste your time. So if you find this video helpful and you haven't subscribed to my channel already, I'd really appreciate it if you did. So let's get to it. So right here you can see my dosing pump, guys. I've got it set up on a little plastic container so the hoses don't get kinked. And on the right side here you've got my magnesium, and on the left hand side is my calcium. I was dosing carbonate for my alkalinity as well, but my alkalinity always stays up so high that I've stopped dosing it for now. So I've got my calcium on pump number 2 and I've got my magnesium on pump number 4. So we're going to go over how to calibrate this dosing pump. You'll notice here I have a Rubbermaid container on the right with some aquarium water. And I have a measuring device that will do 100 milliliters on the left. So the first thing I want to do is manually prime the pump to make sure there's no air pockets. So you press the right side button, then you can press the arrows side to side to go to the pump you want to prime. Then you want to press the center button to run the pump, basically to make sure it's working, or in this case for me to prime it and make sure there are no further air bubbles in the suction line of the pump before trying to calibrate it. If you see any air bubbles that will not get out of the suction tube, you can just give it a flick to help work them out. And you can hold that button as long as you need to work the air bubbles out of that suction line to make sure we get an accurate calibration. After that, we're going to escape out of that screen and press the up button, and that will let us go into calibrating the correct pump using the side-to-side arrows to get to the pump you want, then pressing the center button. So right here I'm on pump 4, and right now it's calibrated 100 milliliters in 224 seconds. Then by pressing the up button again, you are going to recalibrate that pump. And basically all you're doing is setting the amount of time that it takes for that pump to do 100 milliliters. So I've got the suction line in that Rubbermaid container with the aquarium water, and I'm pumping it into what was an emptying measuring device that does 100 milliliters. I usually set the suction hose under something to weigh it down so I don't possibly suck air while it's making the calibration. So obviously you don't need to wait 224 seconds for this to go, so I sped this process up. But once you get to that 100 milliliters in that measuring device, you're going to press that up button one more time, and that is going to set that pump. So now, after recalibrating that pump, I am at 100 milliliters in 201 seconds. Once you do that, you can just hit the escape button. Then I went into it one more time just to make sure that it did reset, which it did. And that's all there is to it, guys. Now, one issue I did have, and it wasn't with the pump, it was with the product I was using to dose my calcium. I was using a powder product, and I had chunks of that powder product clogging my suction and discharge tubes for the calcium. Now, I noticed this issue when I went to calibrate my pump that I was using for the calcium at the time. And you can see there I was just priming, getting the air bubbles out of that suction line, and I just wasn't getting much out of the discharge. After realizing this, I got looking at the tube and noticed that it was 3/4 of the way clogged with little chunks of powder. Now, to dislodge this, all I did was squeeze the tube and work it down and continue manually running the pump until it discharged all that crap out of the tubing. Now you can see where that would start messing with the accuracy of what you're dosing over time. So after I finish with the powder products I'm using now, I will be switching over to a liquid product to see if that helps not have that problem. And another thing to consider when dosing is You do want to try and be consistent with the product you use, because each time you change products, you have to recalculate how much product in the mix into each container and how much volume you want to actually be dosing as well, and that can be kind of a pain. So when I first got this pump, I actually calibrated it right off the bat to see if it was accurate. And when I was doing that, I had one of the pumps that was taking over the 225-second time limit that this dosing pump allows you to calibrate it to. And it was only a couple seconds off of being able to calibrate it within that amount of time. I was just more or less curious how these things worked, which is why I ended up switching it out. So to pull the dosing pump off of the doser itself, there's two plastic clips that hold it in place, and you have to squeeze those as you pull it off. To put the new one on, all you do is push it in place and line up those tabs. You might have to get the drive lined up and then rotate it a little bit to get those tabs to line up with the pump on the doser. So here's a view of one of the pumps itself. I took the back cover off just so you could see the actual pump itself. And I'm just going to explain it on this drawing real quick. So you've got your suction, you got your discharge side. You have your drive. This is actually on the doser itself. And then you have three cylinders basically that are all rotating. So when this rotates, it's spinning these three cylinders. As those rotate, it creates a siphon by squeezing and releasing and squeezing and releasing the hose that goes inside this pump. So it's a very simple concept. So I'm just rotating this pump by hand so you can see how it works. When I was checking it out, I ended up pulling the hose out of the pump as well. That was a little obnoxious to get back into place. I was just trying to see if there was anything stuck in the hose itself. I didn't really find anything, so I put it back together, and I'm basically keeping that pump for my spare. And like I said, it was working. It was just a couple seconds off of doing that 100 milliliters in the allotted time that that doser allows you to. So really quickly, I'm going to get into how I've been adjusting the dosing that I've been doing. Right here, I'm just testing my calcium. So I have to mix up my containers every couple weeks. So when I do that, I just test my calcium and magnesium levels, and then I adjust how much of the supplement that I add to that container. Now obviously you can do this on the doser itself by adjusting how much time you leave your pump running. And I was adjusting the doser at first, and I realized that it was just faster and easier for me because I'm testing my calcium and magnesium levels when I have to redo the containers anyways to see where I'm at, that it was just easier for me to add a little bit more or a little bit less supplement to that container each time I do it. And that way I don't have to get into the pump every time and change the settings. So every time my container runs low, I do this test for each product, and I adjust it a little bit depending on whether I need more or less. I've been doing this for about a month and a half now, and I am getting pretty consistent with what I have to add at this point. So obviously, in order to adjust my dosing this way, I have to keep a logbook. So right here you can see I've got the date, I've got what my levels were at, and how much supplement I added to that container for dosing. So right there you can kind of see my calcium's dropping below that 400 mark, and I only did 2.5 tablespoons in my last container. So I went ahead and bumped it up to 3 tablespoons, and we'll see if that corrects that problem. As far as programming it goes, you will escape out of everything and press the center button. Once pressing the center button, you will have two options: set date and time or set the program. Then using the up and down arrows, you can go to whichever setting you would like to make, press the center button to get into it. Use the side-to-side arrows to select which pump you would like to set. So right here I went over to pump number 3. It's going to ask you how many times per day, the day interval, basically whether you want to skip a day. Then it's going to ask you the dosing volume. After the dosing volume, it will ask you what time of day you want each of the times per day you set to occur. For each of these settings, you will be using the up or down buttons to get it to what you want, and press the center button to set it. So I've never been able to keep my corals alive. I've had these corals for probably 6 months now. I know they're not looking great, but I've been messing with this dosing pump, and I'm finally getting some consistency, and it is starting to show on these corals. Now, if these corals start showing some drastic growth, or I have any other issues with this dosing pump, I will do an update video. As far as my saltwater videos go, guys, I don't just do update videos on a normal basis, because if there's not much going on, I don't want to waste your guys' time by posting a video. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video and it gave you some good information. If so, once again, hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I'd really appreciate it, and I hope to see you next time. Have a good one. Later.